Hey Jafffa Adventures, Terry King here. Welcome to the channel and welcome to the second episode of our Cape York adventure. In this trip we've got some deep river crossings, some amazing campsites, and some awesome four-wheel drive action. So without further ado, let's get stuck into it. In our last episode, we left the Jafffa crew watching a beautiful sunset on the beaches of Cape Melville. The following morning, reluctantly, we packed up our things and headed back south down the track towards Wakuka. We did intend to head north up to Bathurst Bay, but unfortunately the road was closed due to wet weather. Once at Wakuka, we turned west and followed the road for 38 kilometers all the way to Lakefield. This is a pretty easy drive and a decent road. The only thing you may have to negotiate are several water crossings, the depth really being dependent on the type of season that the Capes had. From Lakefield, we punched northerly onto the Lakefield Road and followed that all the way until we hit Musgrave Station on the Peninsula Development Road. Again, this is a reasonably easy drive, just a few water crossings to negotiate. We didn't really have a plan at where we wanted to stay next, so we basically just hit the road and accepted that the road would take us wherever it may.
I was on the road one
Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do?
After filling up at Musgrave, we started our trek north and decided to duck into Port Stewart, as none of us had visited there before. Now, I don't like to speak ill of a place, but we really didn't leave there with very good impressions. We had pretty poor weather, it rained the entire evening, and that never leaves one with a good impression. But the camp itself was very crowded and quite dirty. We camped adjacent to the boat launch in a paddock with possibly hundreds of other campers. There was toilet paper everywhere, there were holes dug for crap, it was just really nasty. We broke camp the following morning and left there quite early. We ended up actually calling the place Port Sewer, which is really unfortunate and just goes to show how tourism can damage a place. So we hightailed it quite early out of Port Stewart the next morning and continued west back to the Peninsula Development Road. The day fined up for us, so we took the opportunity to actually wash a little bit of mud off the truck so we could see out the windscreens. So we continued our push north, and we had heard some really good things about Chili Beach. So we took the Portlands Road and drove out to Chili Beach. Unfortunately, when we were there, the rain was coming in sideways, and the camps were fully booked out. So back west we drove with our tail between our legs and the rain at our backside until we hit a small creek called Brown Creek, where we camped up for the evening. During the night at camp, we were examining the maps and we said, "Hey, what's this Frenchman's Track here? Has anybody heard of that?" Nobody in camp had, and we said, "Okay, well, let's punch down the Frenchman's." And we were eminently glad that we did, because that track turned out to be one of the highlights of the trip. The track leading up to the Pasco River has got a few reasonably deep washouts, so you've got to be mindful of that, but it's nothing that a well-equipped four-wheel drive isn't capable of doing. The Pasco River is the first major obstacle you're going to come to as you're traveling west. It's a rocky-bottomed, fast-flowing river And when we were there, a fella in a GU patrol stalled it in the middle of the river. Not wanting to make the same mistake as him, we made sure that we had the cars tarped up before we hit the water. The one bonus of crossing the Pasco is if you've had rain and your car is full of mud and crap underneath, it's a wonderful opportunity to clean the underside.
Yeah, locker right there. I reckon they're locker back there, mate. Yeah.
It's very rocky as you drive out on the west bank, and the lockers in the cars really helped us in that spot. As you can see here, the high water mark is 3/4 of the way up the door, so this is not a river that you want to stall in. Not that any of them are.
All I gotta do is not drop the phone, I'm right. Well,
Of course, once everybody's across the river, the camera crew's still on the opposite bank, and they've got to get across. And on a river like the Pasco, that can be a little bit challenging sometimes.
It was only meant to be a 40k drive, but it might take us a little while if it's like this all the way.
Just did a creek crossing, more like a river.
yeah. A little bit of water came in.
Up over the bonnet,
Up the door.
just below the door handle.
After you cross the Pasco River, the Frenchman Track straightens out and heads due west, as straight as a die. It's a pretty easy run along there, up until you get closer to the Wenlock end, where you start to run into some creek crossings and some washouts. Good fun though.
Driving along the French track.
Towards the Wenlock River, which is about 10k away.
Mesmerizing. We've had a lot of corrugations or corrugulations, as Aaron calls them.
As we approached the Wenlock River, Matty diffed out in a water crossing. The Toyotas drove straight through, so we reckon it was the offset of the diff pumpkin that actually held him up.
Put a horse on it, right? Yay!
And that brings us to our camp on the banks of the Wenlock River. As we approached the river, before we crossed it, we turned left and followed the river upstream until we were directly across this sand blow, and that's where we pulled up. You're probably going to be sick of hearing me say this, but this camp had to be in the top 3 of our Cape trip. Our intention was to stay there for one evening, We ended up staying there for 3. That just highlights or exemplifies how amazing we thought this camp actually was. The difficulty or the ease of the Wenlock River crossing is really dependent on the season. It wasn't too bad when we pushed through. It probably got up to about the height of your tires. It's the exit on the west bank that can be tricky. There's a track that goes off to the left that's quite boggy but reasonably short, but then there's a track that goes off to the right which is quite steep and less boggy. So you pick your poison when you're going up there. We chose the right track and didn't have any dramas.
Yeah, we camped over there the night.
Oh, yeah. Did you have any trouble through the Pasco crossing?
No. No, yeah.
Not bad at all.
Yeah, I had to put a tarp on, but isn't there to talk to about it?
From the Wenlock River crossing to the Telly track, it's only 12 kilometers. So even if you weren't doing the entire Frenchman's Track and you were heading north or south on the Telly, you wanted to duck into a pretty amazing camp, like I said, it's only 12k off the road and highly worth it. The Peninsula Development Road from Batavia Downs to the Bramwell Roadhouse, which is the start of the OTT, is a pretty easy run. It's corrugated and it's dusty. There are some sections of bitumen along the way. If you just take your time, you'll have no dramas whatsoever. I definitely recommend dropping your tire pressures down. We are running sort of between 25 and 28 psi on the corrugations, and it does help a lot to smooth them out. Your first major obstacle just north of Bramwell Roadhouse on the OTT will be Palm Creek, and the entrances and exits to Palm Creek can be quite rocky. In fact, all 3 of our cars managed to damage our sills and our steps on the exit out of Palm Creek, hitting a rock. It's rock.
Wait, Sharon to come back to the car, mate.
After you negotiate Palm Creek, you've got South Alice Creek and North Alice Creek to negotiate, which are both pretty easy. And then the next big one is the Dell Hunty River. And we actually pulled up and camped at the Dell Hunty. And again, another amazing spot. Just check out some of these photos and video. Unbelievable.
Have a look at this creek, this is awesome. This is Brock coming through now. Do you want to give me the handheld and just let me know what it's like up the top? I'm just getting well out of the way because I don't trust you, Tear. It's all about the bag, my friend. It's all about the bag.
Big bag.
Most water crossings on the OTT in the Cape have campsites north and south of the creeks, and often also east and west of the OTT. That in essence gives you 4 corners to choose from. Make no mistake, however, this is a seriously busy part of the country, especially during school holidays. So here's a pro tip. We were looking for camp by 2 p.m. By doing this, you get the pick of the campsites, and there are some absolute beauties. Any later than that, and you're at the mercy of the other campers, and typically have to grab what you can get as you come across it, good or bad. You can amplify this dilemma tenfold the larger your group is. So my tip, get in early, enjoy a swim, and have some cold drinks. After overnighting at the Dell Hunty River, we continued to push north. The next crossing is Birdie Creek, which is rocky with deep holes, so it definitely pays to walk that one first and pick your line. Shortly after that, you have to make a call to take on Gunshot or to take the bypass. We decided to take the bypass track at that point and hit Gunshot on our return journey back south. Our cars are all daily drivers, and we needed to use them to get to work when we got back home. Next comes Cockatoo Creek, which, like Birdie, has fast-flowing water with deep holes. It also has a dogleg in it, so entering from the south, the dogleg runs upstream for 50 meters or so before cutting across the river. Again, it pays to walk this one before forging in. We actually had members of our party stand in front of the large holes as a guide to the drivers, because from the driver's seat, they're really hard to see.
Too close, Ryan.
Sailor Creek is your next noteworthy crossing north of Cockatoo, with its steep eroded entry and exit points.
How high's the water, Mama? Higher, higher, rising.
5.5K to connect.
That leads you to the section of the OTT that I consider the center. By the center, I mean the center point of some of the main and unmissable attractions of the entire trip. Fruit Bat Falls should not be missed. It's a huge pool below the falls themselves, and it has to be seen to be believed. It really is a spectacular sight. We continued to Canal Creek, where we camped for the remainder of the day. Canal Creek had two attractions for us. Firstly, the creek itself is amazing. You can walk and swim up and down the creek through crystal clear, warm waters. It's an experience that should not be missed.
Hello, boys.
Done.
Hello.
Battery done.
Watch out for there, there's a hole. Yeah, it's right here.
Pop down.
Second, you're in walking distance of Elliott and Twin Falls, which are only about 1 kilometer away. And it's a good thing we walked, because the parking lot was jam-packed with day trippers and all the campsites were completely full. I don't think you could have fit another car in there. That's how busy this place can get. But when you see the attractions there, you can absolutely understand why.
Grab me! Grab me!
We'll wrap this episode up with the stunning sunset over Seisha. In our final installment, we make it to the top. We find an awesome four-wheel drive track that none of us knew about beforehand, and we contemplate Gunshot Creek on our way back south. I trust you'll join us. Until then, stay safe and keep the shiny side up. Bye now.